Good evening and welcome to the March 7th, 2018 Town Board Legislative Session, and I'll officially call this meeting to order. At this point, I would like to recognize Councilman Rob Quinn, who will introduce Pact 260.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Good evening, everyone. It's a great honor to be able to introduce the Webelos 2 Den from Pact 260. I actually have an aspiring young Tiger Scout in this pack, so it's wonderful to see the older scouts here. They are working on their citizenship in the community badge, and so den leader is Todd Gunther, and then the young gentlemen here tonight are Michael Gunther, Thomas O'Neill, Hanson Rapp, Colin Douglas, and Andrew Allen, and they will do the honors in leading us in the pledge.
Can we all please rise?
And salute. Please say with me the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Color guard, post the colors. Color guard dismissed.
Take it. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Please be seated. And at this time, I would like to ask our clerk to please call the roll.
Cole. Here. LaFountain.
Here.
Metzler. Here. Moore.
Here.
Quinn.
Here.
All right, as we get started this evening, we'll begin with communications and announcements, and I would like to start that if I could. Tonight, we have with us a representative from the Golisano Foundation regarding spreading the word campaign. And I would like to recognize Mary. If you would please come forward. And Mary, the floor is yours for information for the town board. Thank you very much for being here and the work that you're doing.
I thank you all for letting me come here and speak. My name is Mary Sluzzo. I'm a resident of the town of Penfield, and I actually live in Linda's neighborhood. And I am speaking on behalf of the Golisano Foundation today. Today is the National Pledge Day to spread the word to end the word. Spread the Word to End the Word was founded in 2009 and is an ongoing effort by the Special Olympics International and Best Buddies to inspire respect and acceptance. This movement is to build awareness for society to stop and think about its use of the R word, the word retard. Most people don't think of this word as hate speech, but that's exactly what it feels like to millions of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, their families, and their friends. The R word is just as cruel and offensive as any other slur. To give you some background, 5 years ago, my son, who at the time was an 8th grader here in Penfield, came home from school and said, "Mom, do you know that kids still say retard? Working at a college, I hear it quite often." And I said, "Yes, I am aware that people still use that word." Having a family member with special needs makes this word all that much more impactful for us. So my son decided he was going to do something about it. He brought the campaign to Bay Trail, where it was encouraged and supported by the administration. Since then, Bay Trail and Penfield High School have continued to be involved in this campaign. Penfield businesses have supported it, as have the Rochester Rhinos, the Nighthawks, the Razor Sharks, and the Americans. The Amerks Moose was actually at Penfield High School today, helping the students support the campaign and take their pledge. As I said, this campaign is spread the word to end the word, and that's exactly what Penfield secondary schools have done for the last 5 years. The Golisano Foundation has spearheaded this initiative in Rochester since 2011. For 8 years, the foundation has been challenging the Rochester community to spread the word and take a stand against using retard or retarded. Their website, golisanofoundation.org, has messages from local politicians, has lists of R-word events going on in the Rochester area, as well as ideas on how you can spread the word. Language affects attitudes. Attitudes impact actions. Make your pledge to choose respectful language that promotes more accepting attitudes for all people. So if you'd like to take the pledge, you can go to www.r-word.org and take your pledge and help us end the word. Thank you.
And can you repeat that a little slower for our audience?
The website?
www, yeah.
Yep, www.r-word.org. And you
Thank
can
you.
get on there and click Take the Pledge and can take the pledge.
I'm happy to report that I'm number 730,668.
Awesome.
So,
And this is a huge community initiative here in Rochester. And I don't know what we are at the end of today, but last year, we were the only community behind the city of Chicago. So this has been a big push for Rochester to take online pledges so we can bump up and
Yeah.
take first.
excellent.
So again, I appreciate the time.
Mary, thank you for coming, and on behalf of the board and the entire community, thank you for all of your support on this initiative.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mary. I'll next recognize our town clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Penfield residents in need of a new or updated passport are invited to attend Passport Night in Penfield on Thursday, October 5th, 2018, from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. at the Penfield Town Hall, 3100 Atlantic Avenue. This service comes to Penfield through the partnership of Monroe County Clerk's Office and the Penfield Town Clerk. For more details, stay tuned to the town's website at penfield.org or call me at 340-8629.
Thank you. Mr. Quinn?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Good evening. I have 3 announcements tonight. The first, the town of Penfield received notification from Spectrum Cable on March 5th of upcoming changes to cable video services in Penfield. These changes included the discontinuing use of analog signal transmission and replaced by a full digitally encrypted delivery signal. For customers without Charter Spectrum issued digital equipment, this upgrade requires the installation of a Charter Spectrum set-top box or cable card device on each television to continue receiving video content. Charter Spectrum is providing free equipment offers to customers depending on their status and current equipment for a specified period of time up to 1 year at no charge. For more information, I would encourage you to call Charter Spectrum customer in need of assistance call line at 1-844-278-3906. Second, this Saturday, March 10th, beginning at 10 a.m., the Penfield Trails Committee will be partnering with the Friends of Webster Trails for their monthly guided hike that is open to the public. Come take a hike and explore the beautiful wooded trails on the west side of Webster Park. Parking will be at the entrance of the Webster Campgrounds, located at 999 Lake Road, west of Holt Road. Terrain will vary, so please wear appropriate footwear. The committee also asks that no pets participate in the hike. Those interested in this event should pre-register through Penfield Recreation by calling 340-8655. And finally, spring is closer than we think. At least that's what I'm told. And here's a sure sign. Daylight savings time is this Sunday, March 11th, beginning at 2 a.m. Though cell phones and smart devices should change automatically, don't forget to turn those manual alarm and wall clocks forward. While an hour's sleep is lost, more sunlight in the evenings are upon us. Daylight savings time is also a good reminder to put new batteries in household warning devices such as smoke and CO2 detectors and hazard warning radios. You should also review, update, and practice emergency escape plans with your household members to help save lives during an emergency. Daylight savings time happens twice a year, beginning on the second Sunday of March and ending on the first Sunday of November. And those are my announcements this evening.
Thank you. Mrs. Nestle?
I have two announcements this evening. First is it is already that time of year to talk about Penfield's Memorial Day Essay Contest. This annual contest is open to all middle school students, grades 6 through 8, who live in or attend school in the town of Penfield. The topic for this year's essay is America's Gift to My Generation. Essays are judged by a panel consisting of members of the American Legion Bremen Post and Penfield Rotary. The top 3 entries will receive cash awards sponsored by a generous donation from VFW Post 820. The winners must be able to present their essay at the town of Penfield's Memorial Day ceremony, which will be Monday, May 28th, in order to be eligible to win. Entry forms, along with the contest rules and info, are available at penfieldrec.org. Entries must be postmarked by Friday, May 11th. Entries should be sent to Memorial Day Essay Contest, care of Penfield Recreation, 1985 Baird Road, Penfield 14526. Also, I want to make everyone aware of an upcoming community forum at Penfield High School. The opioid epidemic community forum will be Monday, March 19th at 7 p.m. in the Penfield High School Commons. An important discussion on the crisis we face as a community. The panel will be led by Dr. Michael Mendoza, Monroe County Commissioner of Public Health, and experts from the Medical Examiner's Office, the Monroe County Sheriff's Office, the Monroe County District Attorney's Office, Delphi Treatment Program, and an impacted local parent. All are welcome, and the PHS Key Club will be providing child care services during this event. This is presented in conjunction with Monroe County Executive Cheryl Donalfo and Monroe County legislators George Hebert and Debbie Draw. Also regarding the opioid epidemic, you may have seen some media today, and you will see some in the future regarding the towns, including Penfield, and initiatives that we are going to be taking. I recently, along with Dr. Michael Mendoza, I attended a seminar and did the Narcan training, and have my Narcan in my car glove compartment. So we are talking now as a town, and also with our county legislators and our neighboring towns, about some initiatives and how we can offer up facilities and other resources to help our community tackle this very important problem. And that's all I have for you today.
Thank you. Mrs. Cole?
Penfield Rotary will be holding their annual Spring Euchre Tournament on this Sunday, March 11th, at the Legacy at Willow Pond Way, beginning at 2 p.m. Cash prizes will be awarded on the scores for 8 games. Participation is limited to 100 players, so register soon. Tickets are $20 before March 10th and $25 at the door. You can register at Family First Credit Union on Browncroft Boulevard, or by mailing a check payable to Penfield Rotary Club, or by calling Charlie at 585-381-8889. For complete tournament and registration details, please log in at penfieldrotary.org. And I too have something extra. I wanted to mention the Eastside Business Expo. We don't have a flyer. I have a flyer on it, but it wasn't part of our communications. It's Tuesday, March 20th. It's at Eaglevale Country Club from 4:30 to 7. It's going to have exhibitors representing local businesses and community organizations. There's tastings from K2 Brewery, and there's other tastings as well. But it's for the for people to connect with the businesses and the community organizations in Penfield. So that's over at Eaglevale Country Club, Tuesday, March 20th at 4:30 to 7. That's it. Thanks.
Great, thank you. We'll move on to communications and announcements. You have 2 opportunities to address the board on any matter. And you can do that one of 3 ways. If you're here in the audience, you can call in at 340-8771, or you can log on at penfield.org. And I'll ask our clerk, has anyone signed up to speak?
I didn't see any.
Okay, very good. Is there anyone? Oh, thank you, David.
I apologize, there are some speakers.
There's more than one. All right, so
There
we'll
are
start
many.
down the list.
Bob Reed.
Bob Reed. Actually, if we could give it to our clerk, she'll make sure everyone gets that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Your name.
All right, so I'm Kathleen McGrail, live at 275 Parkview Drive, and I'm here tonight to talk about something that is of concern to me, and that is how the environmental protection overlay districts are handled when an application comes in for development. I am going to talk about that in the context of specific projects. I may not get to all of them, but I'll try to do 2 of them. And the 3 projects are the Bayview Landing off Empire Boulevard, the Glendevere's expansion off Old Browncroft, and the Ellison Heights development off Penfield Road. And 2 of them still are still in process and not completely approved. So those are the 2 that I'm going to focus on. If there's time, I'll get to the 3rd one. So I'm only one person standing up here today to talk to you, but I think that you might be able to, I think there are a lot of lessons from the Shadow Pines vote, including maybe one, that there is a growing interest, constituency, and advocacy for how the environment's managed in the town of Penfield. And in addition to that, whatever I say here, when I've written down and given to you, has been reviewed by a number of people, probably about a dozen. And so I'm speaking for at least that many people. And the other thing I would say about that is they relied on me to get the facts right. And I'm not a town planner, I'm not a civil engineer, I'm a retired physician. I could have made mistakes in the facts, and then I would welcome you to fix that if I say something wrong, to correct that fact. So let's see here. I'm also aware that these decisions you delegate as the board to the planning board and the zoning board, but some of the time a decision comes to you folks to make that will allow something to advance. And even though you delegate it to someone else, the residents elect you. You may delegate that authority somewhere else, but basically the residents hold you accountable, just like they held me accountable for delegating stuff in my office. So I'm going to start out with what an EPOD is. I'm going to use that abbreviation because not too many people know what that is. It's an Environmental Protection Overlay District, and I'm going to quote from town documents. So these quotes are taken either from the open space document or from the town code. And the first one is, quote, environmental protection overlay districts. These features warrant special consideration by way of their value, natural uniqueness, sensitivity, and functional value to the town and its residents. As Penfield continues to grow, development pressures on these natural assets are becoming great. The town has mapped these areas and incorporated regulatory ordinances to guide development in the preservation of the integrity of these features. The second one is specifically with respect to steep slopes, because all of the places that I'm interested in actually involve steep slope EPODs, among others. So steep slopes, these slopes are primarily located in the western portion of the town along the Irondequoit Creek Valley and in proximity to Irondequoit Bay shoreline. These areas are usually heavily wooded and are underlain with very erosive soils. Maintenance of fragile vegetative cover and the thin layer of topsoil on these slopes is extremely critical in the preservation of these natural features. So I'm going to give you some general questions, and I have to say that I can be somewhat wordy, so I'm going to try to make the question clear by the time I finish. So the first question is, when a development proposal is submitted for a project that involves one or more EPODs, what is the relative weight or value given to preserving the, quote, integrity of the features, and in the case of steep slopes, preserving and protecting the steep slope, versus the weight that's given to the desire of a developer to proceed, versus the value or weight given to preserving the function of the EPOD while somehow severely compromising or eliminating the EPOD altogether. This question, second question, is related to that. Do you have a scoring system for projects involving EPODs that assigns a numerical value that helps to transparently balance the benefits and burdens to the town, to the residents, to the developer, and to the environment? If there is such a thing, it's not apparent in any of the documents or meetings that I have witnessed. And last, are the decisions that are being made consistent with the intent and the language of the EPOD designation and regulations? Or is the preserve and protect the unique features clause kind of receding in favor of preserving the function. Okay, so just for, again, for people who don't know this terminology, the EPODs are steep slopes, watercourses, wetlands, and woodlands. And I'm going to start with Glendevere's on Old Browncroft, because there's a meeting coming up next week that will finalize a decision about that. So Glendevere's is a pre-existing non-conforming use, and they have applied for expansion of their parking lot. Their parking lot is currently 45 spaces. They want to add 37 spaces. To do that, they have to, and this is a quote from their minutes on August 14th or 15th, they have to remove a substantial portion of a steep slope in order to make those 37 parking spots. And the amount of earth that they have to move is 3,000, and this is in their minutes, this is unbelievable, 3,000 to 3,500 truckloads of topsoil or dirt or sand that is valuable enough to sell elsewhere. And I have to say that when I was going over this yesterday, I'm old enough, even some of the people at the table are old enough to know Joni Mitchell and her songs. And she had a song where a line was, they took Paradise and put up a parking lot. I couldn't resist saying that, sorry. So the questions I have about Glendevere's are these. How can you reconcile any approval of this project with the stated objectives in the town documents to preserve and protect unique features when you have to take down the hill in order to authorize the project? As elected representatives of the town, what's your position on that? And will you advise the zoning board to deny the zoning variance? And if you wouldn't, why wouldn't you do that? And the last question is, and this one I truly don't know the answer. I'm not asking in a kind of hostile or rhetorical way. It is the description of the EPODs in the town code and regulation is compliance with those regulations and protections voluntary at the level of the town, the planning board, and the zoning board? Or are those regulations legally binding for the town as well as they are for the developer? And how much discretion is there in the interpretation of the regulations? So I asked a lot of questions, and so I'm going to stop with Glendevere's, and I would ask you, can you respond?
So are all of those questions highlighted or articulated in the materials that you submitted to the clerk?
Whatever I'm reading here, you got.
Because what I would like to do is I would like to respond back to you in writing, all of those questions that you asked, so that you have that. And what I would also do is that when we respond, I would put that on our website as well, so that that information's there for anyone else that would like to look at both the question and the answer and the response for that.
Okay, so I'm going to say that is partly fine, but there are some questions here that should be relatively straightforward. Like, how do you reconcile taking down the hill to build the parking lot when your documents say that it's preserve and protect the integrity of the EPOD? How does that get reconciled?
So what I'll say is that whenever we have anything that involves an EPOD or a sensitive area, when that comes into any board, whether it's the town board, planning board, or zoning board, that goes out to our conservation board for their review, and we rely on them to take a look at that. We also have our town engineer take a look at that as well. And we look for information feedback, or all the boards look for information feedback from both of those resources. Occasionally, we send them out broader than that, so anytime an application comes in, we fill out what is called a 239M. That goes to the county, and then county agencies have an opportunity to weigh in on that. And then in some cases, again, depending upon the EPOD, it would go to DEC. So as we take a look at that, and I think if you take a look at the EPOD district, it doesn't preclude development, but certainly making sure that whatever is done in any of those areas is done, properly, that you're not impacting anything. So from a waterway standpoint, that you're not doing anything from a DEC or potentially Army Corps of Engineers, from a steep slope and potential for, sloughing off and things like that. So, all of those that come in really are, are looked at on a case-by-case basis, with the input from all different groups, advisory groups, or decision-making boards.
Okay, so I guess I'm going to respond to that. And that is, I read the minutes, and I have watched the videos.
Okay.
And I can't tell what priority is privileged in the process of decision-making. Like, I can't tell, is the a desire of the town to work effectively with a business or a developer does that trump? If it's housing or apartments, does the revenue that comes from the building of those trump other priorities? And the reason I come at this is because what is driving the decisions is completely inapparent or opaque on the outside. And I've also had the sense watching the meetings that folks, like for this particular meeting in August, my sense was that there wasn't a lot of appetite to approve this, but there wasn't a way to say no. And so it got approved. That's my sense. Now, that's not a fact. That's an observation that I make, or an interpretation based on my perspective.
And you're still talking about Glendevere's?
Yeah, I'm still
Okay.
talking about Glendevere's. Yeah, and there are pros and cons for every constituency. So for the town, for the residents, for the land itself, everybody, there's something in there for everybody, but how is the value assigned to the burdens or impacts and the benefits for that process? I did that all the time in developing processes in medicine, where there's transparency, where there's a discussion between people who are coming with different perspectives. But I don't really see that, unless it's happening somewhere else, I don't really see it in these decisions. And yes, I'll stop there with that. So I would appreciate the response that you said.
Absolutely.
But I think that if you don't have a transparent rating process or scoring process for these projects, that we really need one. You need one, and the residents need to be able to see it. Okay, so I'm going to go on to the next one, and then I will skip the third one for tonight. So the next one is Bayview Landing. And there's really two projects there. So Bayview Landing is off of Empire Boulevard, behind K2 Brewing, across the street from Basil's. The two projects are, approval's already been given for 33 townhomes.
Actually, approval has not been given
For the
33.
townhomes?
Has not.
Okay,
The planning board still has that as a held matter.
All right, thank
Yep.
you.
No, absolutely.
All right, so, but in that, there's 33 townhomes that have been proposed, and the town code says you can't have more than 8 townhomes in a cluster. So that sounds like 4 or 5 buildings would go up to house those townhouses. The second proposal is for 30 apartments, which would be at the base of the hill, closer to the K2 Brewery. And if I heard right, I think it was the end of January, it will be a 3-story building, and I don't know if more than one building is involved. Now, the whole area that's involved, 3 parcels, I think at least 2, is zoned R120, which is for single-family houses, except part of the parcel on which the apartments are proposed is in the LaSalle Landing District. And almost the entire parcel is laced with multiple overlapping environmental protection overlay districts. So they involve steep slope, waterland, water course, wetland, and woodlot, or woodland. So the question is, how in the world do you mitigate or address all of those overlapping EPODs, and at the same time allow the density? It really does appear to be a fairly dense development going down the hill and then at the base of the hill. And so what are my specific questions? How can you effectively mitigate all of those EPOD requirements? And how do 30 townhomes get approved in an area that's not zoned for townhouses, but is zoned R120? And how, if any way, can this project be stopped? If the developer's correct, he says he can't build the townhouses because his margin is too low because of improvements he has to make. So to make enough money, he has to build the apartments. If you say no to the apartments, then if he's truthful, he can't do the townhouses either. And so I also left myself a note to make a metaphor here. And the first ones that came to mind all related to medicine. I thought, yeah, they want to hear those. But there is one that I used to use, a video that I used when I was doing training for teamwork. And the video had people playing a very quick game of basketball, and they were passing that ball 1,000,000 times. And the task for the people who were watching the video was to count how many passes happened in that video. So get how many passes happened in the video. When the video is finished playing, the facilitator asks, how many passes did you see? There's always some variety, but they're in the neighborhood. And then the facilitator says, did you see the gorilla go through the middle of the video? And in a group of 30, you might get 2 people who see the gorilla because they're focusing on a specific task. Sure. So for all the things that I'm asking here tonight, what my sense is that there's a checklist, and you can go through the whole checklist, and all the boxes are checked. The cultural one's checked, the DEC is checked, the park is checked, everything is checked. So the process was completed, but the EPOD got lost in the process. So with that, let's go to the questions for the Pecora land, Bayview. So how do you reconcile fixing or attending to all of those overlapping EPODs? And I did give you pictures of all of these sites, some of them clipped from your meetings, some of them Google Earth or from your town website.
GIS. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they're all your pictures, basically, except 2 photos. So how do you do that? How do you, oh, and I should say for people here or people listening, that in order to do the apartments, part of that land is zoned R120, and discussion at the meetings has been just move it or move the LaSalle Landing boundary up, and then you wouldn't have to, the R120 would no longer be an impediment. So that seems kind of a fast way to play with zoning or, zoning. So would anybody like to respond?
So that site is, no question, that site is very unique, and I know the planning board actually worked on that for close to a year, and as I said earlier, they have not, they still have it as a held item, because I think the applicant or developer, as they took a look at it, had some concerns about could he make it work. I know the planning board worked again with DEC, the county, and a number of other agencies to look for ways to mitigate, impact to the steep slopes and the waterways associated with that. I mean, most of that area, bar a few of the surrounding, trees and things like that, there's a lot of scrub growth that's in there that has grown up from after Mr. Pecora stopped playing in the dirt in that area. And that site certainly has a lot of history because what we see today is completely different than what it was, before Mr. Pecora got on. And I know that Pecora and the town were in on again, off again with lawsuits for different work that he had done and things like that. But that has been a balance as the planning board has taken a look at that, and that has been probably one of their main items that they have taken a look at is the EPOD aspect of that. As it relates to the apartments down below, when the Dr. Howard came in to discuss that with the board, there was a lot of concerns with this board because while the planning board is taking a look at the 33 Townhouse project. It is the town board that has the jurisdiction for LaSalle's Landing. And the board had enough concerns that they said that they would be willing to have a public information meeting, public information, not a public hearing, but public information meeting, because at the time, for the 33 townhomes, there were a handful of people that came to speak either for or against. But it was evident that maybe not everybody was as aware of it as they could or should be. And when the discussion came up about the zoning line of LaSalle's Landing to R120 was bisecting a parking lot, it was actually staff that put that on the table for the town board to at least consider. And I think this board, there were enough moving parts on that this board said, you know, time out, we want to hold a public information meeting, give everybody in that area an opportunity to speak and relook at that project overall.
Yeah, so the one comment I'll make
And
about...
I'm sorry, and I just wanted to, you know, that the developer has not, as of this point, he has not pursued that.
Okay. About the residents, I would say the residents have been voicing concerns for probably 10 years about development proposals for that property. And after a while, I think people do get tired of fighting or arguing. And that's a time when something could be pushed forward because the resistance is less. Doesn't mean that there isn't
Interest.
resistance or, I would actually say, strong historical resistance against that proposal. I'm not going to go on, I took enough time, I'm not going to go on to the Ellison Heights project except to say that I took pictures of erosion down the steep slope. Buildings are built right up to the edge of the steep slope. Your regulations say that you're supposed to build 50 feet, well, that the steep slope zone goes 50 feet from the top and the toe, and the very large buildings are built right on the lip of the slope, and there's erosion all the way down the hill, and it's on both sides. So it's on the southwest slope, which goes directly into the creek, and it's on the northeast slope, which goes up to the road. Paula responded to me about that. Mark Valentine is going to address it, and then they're going to get back to me. But I think that if I'm not back here about this stuff, somebody else will be back.
And as I think you recall, I instructed Mark to present it to the planning
Yes.
board and to
Yep.
get back to you
Yes,
directly.
you did. Thank you very much for that.
Thanks, Kathleen. Thank you.
Bob Reed?
Bob Reed, 275 Parkview Drive. Ditto for everything that my wife just presented to you. But I would add that driving on Penfield Road recently and going up towards Gentle's Farm Market, I had to pull off the road and stare at what I thought was some kind of alien structure that had been dropped down out of the skies, because it wasn't there the last time I looked. And that was the Ellison Heights development that's there. Four buildings, or is it five?
I think it's 5, Bob.
5. Very large, very high, looming way up above the tree line. We're going to be living with those for a long time. It seemed to me, and I'm not against development, but it seemed to me out of scale for the location, and not a good thing. And I recall that many years ago, before Penfield Road was rebuilt, the state, I believe, wanted to take easements to widen Penfield Road between Gentle's Farm Market and the expressway to 4 lanes. And the residents were up in arms about that and resisted that. And I guess eventually they abandoned that plan because that's a very beautiful Penfield Road. And you change it from 2 to 4 lanes, and you lose a lot of trees, and you bring the road into people's front yards. And it's not a nice thing. It would degrade their quality of life. Now you've got these 5 big buildings there, apartments or condominiums, I'm not sure what they are.
Apartments.
It's going to be an enormous increase in traffic, and I wonder if the plan is going to reemerge to widen Penfield Road. That would be of a big concern to me. Obviously, it's a little late now because the building is there. Those buildings are there. I remember some years ago, the whole hillside was deforested. and seemed to happen very quickly, and all that was left was a big, giant pile of mulch that was decomposing and steaming so much that I think some people called the fire department because they thought there was a fire going on there. And then I noticed the, giant excavation going on as they removed so much of the fill in order to put those buildings in. And that it just seems out of scale, as does the other Rob Morgan project on Empire Boulevard. It's still, I guess, going on, not completed yet. Water's Edge, 9 big buildings on scarce Penfield, not quite waterfront, but overlooking the bay. We don't have too many iconic views in Penfield, but all of these up here involve Irondequoit Creek, Some of them are the view from where the Bayview Landing is going to go on. I'm not saying that nothing should have been built there, but 9 gigantic buildings seems to be an issue of scale. And I guess I'm not as scientifically approaching it, but I wonder how the decisions are made and how that could have happened, how these 2 developments that seem to me and maybe to many others to be out of scale could have happened. And I don't question your sincerity or love of the town of Penfield. I'm a newcomer. I've only been here 31 years. Some of you grew up here. Some of you were born here. Some of your families lived here. You spend a great deal of time for very low compensation in meetings like this, taking some abuse from us at times. You care about the town. But I hope you will, when you get together behind closed doors, you'll talk about priorities and development. Penfield is changing rapidly, and some changes I see are good, some are not so good. But these very, very large complexes, they just seem to be out of scale for the town. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Thank you.
Reverend Stephen Brotzman.
Stephen?
Hi.
Good to see you, Reverend.
I am the new pastor at First Baptist Church of Penfield at 1862 Penfield Road. You might know us as that's where the Penfield Valley Nursery School is located. And I have been hired by the search committee to build better relationships with the town and the school board. And so in that effort, I am here to offer our help. We are part of this town. We were founded in 1804 before the town itself was founded. And we want good relationships with the town. If there is any service we can provide for you, anything we can do to assist you in your efforts to, improve and maintain Penfield, let us know. Our website is fbpenfield.org, and you have my contact information.
And I write about you each month. So you ready for your once-a-month Saturday flapjack,
Yep.
fresh pure maple syrup, and all you can eat. So it's very nice to see you, and look forward to working with you.
Thank you for your time.
And I'll make it a point, to reach out and get together and maybe talk in a little bit more detail about maybe some opportunities between the church and the town.
Great.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Hopefully we have spring soon, and we can maybe collaborate on some projects that could benefit both the town, the school district, and the First Baptist Church.
I appreciate that.
All right. Thank you, Reverend. Thank you.
Jeff Burns.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Tony. I am Jeff Burns, 39 Scarborough Park. I'm one of the founders of Save Shadow Pines, maybe one of the last times I'll be saying that, along with Kate McCardle and Mindy McLaren. And first, I wanted to say how grateful to and proud of our townspeople I am for voting overwhelmingly to approved the community's purchase of Shadow Pines and the Clark House. My understanding is this was the larger voter turnout ever for a referendum, that the one in 2002 for the bond issue was about 4,000 voters, and this was close to 7,000. And it also shows that there's a mandate and very strong feelings for conservation, for protection of our environment here in Penfield, and for protecting open space in our agricultural heritage. And the next part, I wanted to thank the entire board for all the work that you've done over this time. And thank you for your work, the various things that you did that some other towns didn't do. The moratorium on construction at Shadow Pines, the creation of the Citizens Moratorium Committee, thank you for that. Committing to follow the Moratorium Committee's recommendations to purchase Shadow Pines and to preserve open space and recreation. Thank you for that. And then voting to purchase Shadow Pines. And then your persistence in negotiations, particularly Tony, I know you must have been involved all along very closely with that, and I really appreciate your persistence, and that it led to the extension of the closing deadline so that a referendum could be held, because it was pretty close to nip and tuck there for a little while as to whether that would happen.
Yes.
And then also special thanks to Andy Moore, who acted as a liaison between Shadow Pines and the community and the town board. Appreciate everything that you did for us there and providing information from the town's perspective. Also want to thank Oldcastle for offering to work out a deal with Penfield when they could have sold Shadow Pines back in 2016. There was a point, as you know, where they had a letter of agreement with a residential developer, and it could have gone the other way. So I appreciate that Oldcastle had a preference of working with the town, and they should be, that should be recognized. So a lot of people, so anyways, thank you to all of you. So a lot of people have been asking what's next with Shadow Pines, and also what's next with our group, Save Shadow Pines. As for Save Shadow Pines, what we're planning to do is we plan to stay engaged and to help ensure good stewardship of Shadow Pines. And we plan to morph into a Friends of Shadow Pines group. And what we'd like to do is collaborate with the town where we can on various projects. And the first I had emailed about to you last week, Tony, is that we'd like to help out with a cleanup of Shadow Pines, hopefully before it opens up, so that it looks its best when it's opened up to the public. But if not, then the opening day or shortly thereafter. We've had a lot of people who have been not only, I've mentioned it to people, but people have been coming to us and are eager to help out with that want to help out with the cleanup. And I think this would be a very good community project. We'd like to collaborate with the town and hope the town could provide garbage bags and collection trucks or something to move stuff out. I don't know what the condition's going to be that we're going to find. Before it was posted for against trespassing after it went on the market, I went through a couple of times and I cleaned up stuff a little bit then, and I had seen beer cans and things like that. So I don't know, I would assume there might be some things like that now that would be cleaned up. But we could certainly help out also with brush and making sure that the paths that are there, the cart paths and stuff, could be glad to help out with sweeping and stuff. So we hope, so will you accept our offer here?
We'll certainly stay connected.
Yeah.
First off, we still don't own the property.
Sure.
And we will not own the property until towards the latter part of April is when we have to close. And then once we do close, one of the things, because that property hasn't been used for the last couple of years, and I think I posted this on our website under Supervisor's message, and I think it's also on the project file page of the website, and that is that we'll be sending our DPW crews in to take a look at general condition of some trees, because before we get a lot of activity into that property, we got to make sure it's safe. So if there are widow makers, hanging, branches hanging in the trees that could come down, dead trees in general, those trees that have fallen over and things. So we'll do a general assessment of that property right after we close, which I would expect would start to take place in the May timeframe, and take care of whatever we need to at that point, again, to make it safe for those that want to walk in that area and, utilize the trails that are there, probably somewhat grown up and things. Our Trails Committee has indicated that they want to be working very closely and have a couple of what I'll call their work weekends or work dates to go in and tackle some different things. So I think that, like you say, there is a lot of interest from a lot of folks, and I think, continue to stay close to our website, because we're going to continue to, Mr. Horwitz and I, as we move forward this next step of going out for our bonds, coming to the closing and things like that, we will update and hit the different milestones so folks know when it is officially ours, when we plan on going in to do that first pass from a safety standpoint, and then from there, working with various groups on what I'll call general maintenance of trails and maybe cleanup and all of those types of things.
Okay, so the closing, there's not a date yet, it's the first week or two of April approximately?
Towards the end of April.
Well, excuse me?
Towards the end of April.
Toward the end of April, okay.
The purchase agreement gives us until April 30th. So some of it, so as you can imagine, once we held the vote, the next day the town clerk had to file a notice in the paper. There's a 20-day period that has to go by after the vote, the estoppel period. And then from there, and running somewhat parallel with that, our financial folks are working to put together all the documents so we can go out to sell our bonds. You have to have so many days in order to do that, and there's like a bond opening or similar to a bid opening. You find out who is looking to buy or purchase your bonds, what the rate is, all of those types of things. Then once you get all that established and all the paperwork associated with that taken care of, then you can start to get together the rest of the paperwork for the closing. So right now we have until the 30th. Our goal is to close as soon as we can, but we have up until the 30th of April.
Okay, and then it looked like sometime in May.
In May, we'll start the evaluation process, and then from there, we'll look to have some type of opening, if you will, for folks to start using the site.
Yeah, and then so for Save Shadow Pines or Friends of Shadow Pines, should we be trying to coordinate with the Trails Committee then?
What I would say is until we close, just keep an eye on the website for now, if you will, and then once we're closed and we've done our safety review and check, then we'll keep you advised as we go through.
Yeah, as I say, there are a lot of people very eager to
I
help out with that.
know.
It's wonderful.
Folks are
It's
getting
really
anxious.
great.
Friday when we had that 15 inches of just wonderful white stuff come down and clog up our roadways and everything. I had a phone call from a mother who must have been probably up to her eyeballs with kids who said, I want to go cross-country skiing and snowshoeing on the property. And I said, well, it's private property. It's posted. You really shouldn't be on there. And she says, at this point, if they want to haul me away, they can haul me away. So I know there's a lot of people anxious to get out.
Yeah. Related to that, part of the email that I sent you, a concern I have is that in the warmer weather when the snow's gone, it's going to be a very tempting place to go in with a bicycle. And I'd love to do that myself. I mean, it's a great spot for it. But I'm concerned that before it's ready for that, or even that the decision is made that it's appropriate for that, that there could be damage that could occur to the fairways and things like that when it's muddy and everything. It could get pretty tracked out. So I was hoping that either through a group, a bicycle club or something like that, once a decision's been made that it would be an appropriate place for bicycles, that the areas where the golf cart trails are, the paths, the golf cart paths, as you know, they don't all connect. They are disconnected around the greens, and there's big gaps between the trails. Right. That I think we need to flag those areas and create kind of a de facto trail that people would know to go to, whether they're on bikes or even walking, so that we don't damage the fairways while they're wet. Once things dry out and stuff starts growing again, I'm sure it'll be all right. But
the bigger issue is we haven't even had the conversation about even allowing bikes in that on that property. So
I understand.
That'll be something that this board will have to have early on some discussion on that because there are those groups that that do a good job of managing and being respectful of the area, and then there are some that want to use it or misuse it. Is probably the better way to go. And I worry about the back 9 of that property where you have your most sensitive areas. So you've got your steep slopes, you've got creeks, you've got wooded areas and things like that. And I'm not convinced that while it may be exciting as a biker to ride through there, I don't necessarily personally agree that that's the best place for them to ride. So that I know we'll be having those conversations as we go through, and I know that there will be a lot of people interested in biking on that property.
And I know that there are groups that they've got some expertise where they could help with an assessment and looking at whether it's an appropriate place for bikes or not.
Yes.
But again, my concern chiefly is that there's not damage before, that we don't damage the property.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then certainly we all would like to open it up for as much use as is possible and can be done safely and stuff.
Yes, absolutely.
I did have a little bit of a concern, Tony, that right after the vote, that you began talking with the media about the potential need for a community center there. Now, when we were involved in trying to protect Shadow Pines, there were times where the people on the no side were using that as an argument for not purchasing Shadow Pines. They said, this is the tip of the iceberg, that once the town buys it, they're going to want to put in a community center and a library, and your taxes are just going to keep going up. And we defended the board basically in that and said, no, there are no definite plans for anything, that there are ideas for the future, and these would likely be years away, and it would have to be ascertained by the Citizens Committee and other deliberations and stuff, and this would likely be many years out. And it's not even certain that Shadow Pines would be the ideal location. I know that
Absolutely.
Rothfuss Park is laid out, and within the plans, it has space for a community center if that time again comes where we need
Well, it doesn't have place for a community center. It has a lodge similar to Dolomite that is a little bit bigger in nature, with the idea that they use it for programming space, but not a community center. So I've tried very hard as we've gone through here to give different examples of what could be used at that particular piece of property, and I think I've been very consistent all along to say, for general municipal use, so we don't get into the parkland alienation issue. And so as we go through, as folks have asked me, I can give them a range of things, anywhere from a 211 acre butterfly garden all the way up through and including maybe a community center and maybe a library. But you're right, that has not been flushed out at this point. This board has not made any decisions on that in any way, shape, or form. Our first goal was to acquire the property. That was the charge the board gave to Mr. Horwitz and I, was to work to acquire the property and to work with the various groups and agencies such as real estate finance, bond council, and things like that, to acquire the property. So that was our goal. And then in our Q&A session, when I was doing an information meeting on that property, one of the things that we said is that early on, it'll be used more passively for some hiking and maybe cross-country skiing and snowshoeing and things like that. But until we have our citizen group and we come back with recommendations, I heard as recent today from a resident and I think a group, someone part of Save the Pines, even indicate might be a logical area for some senior housing. So there is a lot of ideas out there, and before we get ourselves too focused on what is or isn't going to happen, let's let the process be the process.
Good, yeah. I mean, after all this work to protect Shadow Pines from residential development, we're worried about, we don't want to have to worry about the town rushing into municipal development.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
We just authorized, 3.65, worth of bonds. And so I'm very sensitive, although, the town's tax rate is one of the lowest in the county. I'm very sensitive about, what that impact is. And how we approach it by way of overall financing.
Yeah. Now, the Save Shadow Pines project has brought up many issues about town, county, and property, school property tax levels, and also about what the ideal ratio would be for residential and agriculture and commercial tax revenue so that our taxes don't increase and so that we can be sustainable as a community and also have the type of community that we want to live in. Is there, what is the current ratio in Penfield? Do you happen to know what it is now, the break between residential and commercial and agriculture?
I don't have that right off the top of my head.
Yeah.
We do have that, Jeff,
Yeah.
and if I tried to give you that exact number,
I understand.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
I wouldn't nail
Yeah.
it correctly. So I can give you what that is and what that split is today. From what I'll call vacant land. Much of that is residential. So if you think of East Penfield, farmland and vacant land, then our residential areas that are built, and then our what we call our commercial / industrial.
Yeah. Well, as I said, this has been a very educational process going through all this, and I think it's good for the community, that it's something that we should continue the conversation, and I think it's beneficial for the town board and for the town in general to continue looking at that. I mean, the whole idea that, what we were talking about, how the residential property did not pay its way in terms of school property tax, we need to look at that, and I'm sure you are all the time, as to what that balance is with the other type of development that would be around, while still maintaining quality of life in town.
So I think that's one reason why this board embarked on adding a new zoning district called mixed use, because we heard pretty loud and clear that we're not a community that we want a big box in every corner.
Right.
And to have all of the tax base balanced on the backs of residential isn't the right way to do that either. So to get some additional commercial, but do it in a way that is fitting within the town. That was the whole design and the work that we had a citizen group, our town staff, and then ultimately the town board to approve. And that was to have a mixed-use district. And the idea there was a combination of residential and commercial, but commercial in a way that was fitting with the community, and so that you could generate some tax dollars from business, but not having a big box on every corner.
Yeah. No, when I heard about the mixed-use districts, I thought that was very exciting for the town in terms of the possibilities there. If it's done right, it would be a place where ideally people can live, work, and play, they say, that's an area like that. And I saw some places like that when I lived in the South, when I lived in North Carolina. But if it's not done right, it's just another term for strip malls, I mean, I've been places too where they called it mixed use, and basically it was it just looked like more strip malls, really, with maybe a little bit of residential someplace nearby. So I hope that we're really looking at, I know there's a lot of work being done on this, but
I know that they put together, a design pattern, design map to what it looked like, and and some of the recommendations as part of that, and some of the guiding principles, and it didn't include strip malls.
Yeah, good. And one last question is related to mixed use. The Wickham Farms project that I've been reading about in the paper. So that's a mixed use project in a mixed use designated area. And then if it extends, or if something extends beyond that to the next farm that's next, to the north, that's up for sale right now.
Grossman's.
Yeah. Is the planning done so that those will, that they work together? I mean, one of the things with mixed use is you really want to have different sections so that they're complementary to each other.
Sure.
And that will be one of the objectives of the town as well, to make sure that things all are in harmony. And
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, Grossman's right now, they're not opening for the 2018 season. I'm not aware that their property is officially on the market for sale.
Yeah.
The Wickham property is, and there's a sketch plan review that will be had tomorrow evening in this room by the planning board. And they'll be taking a look at a combination of independent living, memory care, and assisted living. And their interest was to build on the Wickham farm and then work very closely with the Y and the U of R to tie all of that together. I have not heard that that developer is looking at the Grossman property, but in light of them not opening, I'm sure that there may be some discussions going on for that property as well.
Yep. Now, with the Wickham Farm project, it may be premature to ask this, but do you know what the scale of investment of that project is?
For which project, Jeff?
For the Wickham Farm?
So for the independent living and
yeah,
what have you,
commercial, yeah.
I think it's very early. Tune in tomorrow night
Right.
on our cable channel, and we'll
Yeah.
all learn
Yeah.
together.
I noticed, though, that it's an Episcopal group that's running it. This will still be taxed, property tax property there, right? It's not
That is
gonna
our
be-
understanding.
yeah.
Again, we have not heard
Yeah.
anything otherwise,
Right.
and I know a lot of people will be either here in this room tomorrow evening or tuning in on our channel 12.
Yeah, okay, very good. All right, well, thank you
All right?
again.
Yep, thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
I have no one else.
No one else? All right. Is there anyone in the audience? I see one very handsome scout with his hand up, and I would invite him right to the podium, and if you wouldn't mind giving us your name, your rank, and we won't ask for your serial number, but we'll ask for your troop number if we could. And yeah, there you go. Pull that right down. You're an expert at this.
My name is Michael Gunther. I'm from PAC 260, and I'm a Weeblo too. And I have a general question. If a resident observes cars consistently speeding on their street, is there anything that can be done?
That is a great question. So I just had a conversation with Captain Sam Bell. Captain Sam Bell is the captain of A-Zone that takes care of Penfield and Perrington and Pittsford. And I had this conversation with him actually yesterday about speeding on Qualtrough Road that's over by the school administration building that a couple of residents asked me about. And when I hear things like that, I talk with Captain Bell, and he assigns his deputies to some special attention. And they go and they'll sit along that roadway at different times of the day and issue some tickets to help slow down folks that are speeding through there. So it helps for a period of time, but if not done on a regular basis, the speed seems to creep back up. But if you have a particular area, I'd love to know where that is, and I'll make sure Captain Bell has that.
Okay.
And just one other comment there. You may have seen these sort of carts with the radar signs every now and then on town roads. So our engineering department also monitors speeds on town roads throughout the town. And, again, as Supervisor LaFountain said, we have a sense of where the area is. It's possible that our engineering department may have been out there recently or may be able to go out and sort of lay those strips out, just get a sense of traffic count, speed, and see if there's a more significant problem.
Okay. So, should I tell you?
You lay it on me. I'm making a note right now, so if you give me the road, you don't have to give me a specific address, but if you give me a road
Or the name of the
that you're
driver.
concerned, or the name of the driver.
Is it your parents?
We're in the airport, so it's more of a general question.
More of a general question. So,
What can we do?
yep, absolutely. So in that particular case, what I would do is Chief Sam Farina, who I was with this afternoon for the 911 Operating Board. He is the Chief of Police in Fairport. And if you reach out to the Fairport Police Department and let them know what the area is, I'm sure that Chief Farina will be more than willing and happy to send some of his officers over to take a look at that area.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. All right. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board on any matter? There is another opportunity at the end of the agenda, but is there anyone that would like to address the board? Any more scouts? What do you think, guys? You know, it's either ask the questions or go home and do homework, and, so I'll leave that up to you. All right.
Some nights we'd rather do homework.
We'll continue on with our agenda, and I'll recognize Mr. Moore, if I could, for additions and deletions to the agenda.
Sure, Mr. Supervisor. One addition to tonight's agenda, that is Resolution 18T-083, entitled Setting a Public Hearing for the Adoption of Local Law 1 of 2018 to be known as a local law extending the moratorium and prohibition within the town of Penfield of public golf course redevelopment. Thank you.
I
Thank you.
second that addition.
It's been moved and seconded. This resolution will appear as new business resolution, and then the number will be 083. We have the minutes before us from February 7th, 2018. I would entertain a motion of approval of those minutes.
I move that the minutes of February 7th be approved.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion by the board? Seeing no discussion, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Metzler.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
5 ayes.
Petitions. Has the town board, town clerk, or town attorney received any petitions since our last meeting?
No.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to resolution by function, starting with law and finance, please.
Authorization for town supervisor to sign a professional service contract with Dave Miller of AVS for the 2019 townwide update.
Moved.
Second.
Be it further resolved that the supervisor is hereby authorized to sign a contract with Dave Miller of AVS for professional services rendered. Said contract to be reviewed by and approved by the Penfield Town Attorney. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion. Seeing no discussion, roll call vote, please.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Metzler. Aye. Moore.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
5 ayes. Setting a public hearing for final subdivision and site plan approval to allow 14 residences in Phase 6 of the Abington Place subdivision on 5.74 acres at 1229 Fairport 9 Mile Point Road.
Moved.
Second.
Whereas pursuant to Local Law 2 of 2003, known as the Town of Penfield Incentive Zoning Law, on May 4th, 2011, the Town Board granted preliminary overall approval of 99 single-family residences and final approval for 28 residences in Phase 1 of the Abington Place subdivision. Now therefore be it resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Penfield will hereby hold a public hearing at the Penfield Town Hall on April 4th, 2018 at 7 p.m. on said date to consider the application and to hear all persons interested in the question of consideration of this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion. Seeing no discussion, roll call vote, please.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Metzler.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
5 ayes. Awarding the contract for the replacement of a portion of the roof at the community center.
Moved.
Second.
Whereas sealed bids were sought and requested in a manner prescribed by law to furnish the Department of Public Works with a service contract that would provide the town of Penfield with the purchase and installation of roofing materials for a portion of the roof at the community center. And whereas on January 12, 2018, the following sealed bids were received, opened, and read publicly from the following list of suppliers: Cornerstone Restoration and J&B Installations. Whereas the bid received from J&B Installations was the lowest bid and meets the expectation and specifications of the bid package for a total cost of $90,500. Whereas the town board approves appropriation of $90,500 from the unassigned general fund balance as an amendment to the 2018 budget to fund this project in full. Now therefore be it resolved that a contract is awarded to J&B Installations to provide and install roofing material for a portion of the roof at the community center. This resolution and the bid submitted shall constitute the contract. This agreement is to be reviewed and approved by the town attorney.
Thank you. Discussion. Seeing no discussion, roll call vote, please.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Metzler.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
5 ayes. Making a determination of non-significance and adopting a neg deck for new sidewalks in the Willow Pond neighborhood.
Moved.
Second.
Whereas the town board supports the construction of 440 linear feet of new sidewalks on the east side of Sanders Farm Road and 485 linear feet of new sidewalks on the south side of Crown Oak Drive. Whereas the proposed locations of the sidewalks were reviewed and it was determined that they will not have a detrimental impact on the environment, the town board, acting as lead agency pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, has classified this proposal as an unlisted action. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board makes a determination of non-significance and adopts a negative declaration for this proposal, a copy of which is attached to this resolution.
Thank you. Discussion. See no discussion. Roll call vote, please.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Metzler.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
5 ayes.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to old business. Is there any old business to come before the board this evening? See none. We'll move on to new business, and I'll call on the clerk for Resolution 038, please. 083, please.
Setting a public hearing for adoption of local law number 1 of 2018 to be known as a local law extending the moratorium and prohibition within the town of Penfield of public golf course redevelopment.
Moved.
Second.
Whereas the town board of the town of Penfield wishes to consider adopting a proposed local law 1 of 2018, which will extend the moratorium and prohibition of public golf course redevelopment on real property located within the town of Penfield. Whereas, subject to application, is determined to be a Type 2 action pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, known as SEEKR. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board at the town of Penfield shall hold a public hearing at the Penfield Town Hall on March 21st, 2018 at 7 p.m. on said date to consider proposal and to hear all persons interested in the question of this adoption of the local law 1 of 2018, which would extend the moratorium of public golf course redevelopment on real property located within the town of Penfield. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion. So the purpose of this resolution is that the moratorium, the current moratorium is expiring on March 30th, and this board wanted to extend that moratorium so that our comprehensive plan committee, as they start to take a look at updating that plan, we still have a lot of interest in golf courses, and specifically the Shadow Pines property, and the board believe that the right thing to do is to extend the moratorium for another year to give the comprehensive plan an opportunity to be updated, and then we'll take any and all recommendations from that as to that property and how it might be zoned in the future. So with that, and seeing no further discussion, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Metzler.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
5 ayes.
This brings us to our second opportunity for public participation. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to address the board on any matter, we would welcome your thoughts, comments, and feedback. All right, seeing no further information, I'd like to give one more shout out to our Scout Pack 260 for being here this evening. Thank you. I hope you all do well. On Saturday, I did an Eagle Court of Honor, and I had an opportunity, gentlemen, to present a certificate on behalf of the town board. And what I'll say is that I hope a few years from now that I see some of you receiving your Eagle Award. You know, it does make a difference. It does have an impact on all the things that you do, whether it's a college that you're looking to go to, if you're putting a resume together for your first job, and everything else being equal, education, experience, if you have an Eagle Scout or not, a lot of times that nod goes to the Eagle Scout. So I hope you all well on your journey. I look forward to seeing you, like Mr. Moore, an Eagle Scout, and maybe see you up here on the town board sometime in the future. So keep up the good work, and keep working on your badges. I think 21 in all, if memory serves me correct, and we hope to see you at an Eagle Court of Honor. So with that, and seeing no further business to come before the board this evening, the March 7, 2018 legislative session of the town board stands adjourned at 8:19 p.m. Thank you for everyone that participated. Thank you to Penfield TV.